I'm Chris from Canopy and Stars, and for the last episode of A Life More Wild this series, we are out on Arthur's Seat with poet, comedian, writer, actor Tim Key. He has an emotional connection to this place after years and years of visiting. We're going to go all the way up Arthur's Seat and all the way back down.
So we are now in, I want to say my spiritual home of Edinburgh. Just coming past, is this the Scottish Parliament? Is it? Yeah, Scottish Parliament. Coming past the Scottish Parliament at the bottom of the Royal Mile, and I'm faced with a big lump, which I don't think this is Arthur's Seat per se, but it's, well, not far off. I think this might be something crag.
Salisbury Crag.
Salisbury Crag, I reckon.
Good guess.
Yeah. So I've been coming to Edinburgh every year for 24 years now. First year 2001, and used to run up, depressingly, used to be able to run up Salisbury Crag, and probably ran up there about 10 times with my friend Mark Watson, who I started out doing comedy with. And then I'd stand heroically on the top of the cliff on the Salisbury Crag, surveying my city. And then every year after that, I'd do the same run, less and less and slower, but as a badge of honour to get to that point on the top of Salisbury Crag, and then just look over the whole of Edinburgh. And I think this summer, well, you know, dress it up as much as you like, really. I don't think I did that. So we are where we are. The way I got into it was when I was living in Cambridge. I guess I would have been like 24. Pretended to be a student at Cambridge University. People like the story because I think it's someone who's like has no right to be in Cambridge, at Cambridge University, and is just like, I don't know, went to like a pretty normal school and all of that, and then suddenly, because I think a lot of people who are at Cambridge are kind of, not everyone, but are quite kind of privately educated. So I think I was doing it for the people, where I just went in and pretended that I was studying at Sydney Sussex College, had a decent cover story, and wormed my way in. And then I think the director he was on to me, and I met with Phil and Owen, who were running the show in the Maypole pub, and had a kind of a like sort of De Niro and Pacino in Heat, or like Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, this kind of clandestine deal where they said, okay, I was like waiting to hear what my punishment would be, and they were much more, okay, we don't speak about this, you're in. So that's how I got in. And then I guess that would have been like winter of 2001, and just before that, no interest in this area. Well, not no interest, but it sort of feels impossible. Like if you're like a 12-year-old, and the prospect of doing what I do now, that's a bird, of like, being a comedian or being I guess like someone on telly, that feels like no more ridiculous than wanting to be like a spaceman or a footballer. You shouldn't really be in a world where you're in the same world as Mr. Bean, because that's like somewhere completely otherworldly. So yeah, it's weird. So in 2001, that was all bound up with coming to this place, to Edinburgh, and I guess the first steps into working out how to do it and working out what I wanted to do. The thing about Edinburgh is you do suddenly have the chance to perform 25 nights in a row. And I think it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing mostly, but that is what that kind of weirdly relates to this walk where I'm taking you now, which is it's not a simple thing. I think all comedians would probably agree with that the 25 days of Edinburgh are, unless you're very lucky and you arrive and you do your first show and it's perfect, which I think is probably sort of no such thing, you can find yourself soul searching in a feeling that everything's about to implode. And in those circumstances, well, I think you have like a couple of options. You do have you have each other, and there is like a very supportive and good community of people. That's option A in terms of keeping your sanity and in terms of trying to steer your ship through the fairly complicated seas of Edinburgh. And option B is what we're doing now, I think. Yeah, I'd say I remember a show I did last year. I wasn't sure exactly what it was. And so this walk we're doing now and variations of it, I wouldn't claim to climb Arthur's Seat every day, but getting out of the city and walking on paths like this and just either, bleak as it sounds, listening to your own show, which isn't pretty, or just thinking and maybe just allowing yourself to stop getting caught up in everything that's happening.
I was thinking, how much is it collaborative and how much competitive?
Well, it isn't. I don't think it's competitive. I think, but then again, I suppose I do. Deep down, I feel like the only. I worked this out the other year. Me and a friend, John Kearns, who's also pound for pound, I suppose, my favourite comedian, another stand-up, and he and I worked out that two metrics, for me anyway, is to have someone on the train home who says, my favourite show was that one.
Right.
And then when you yourself are on the train home, you say, that's the best show I've done. And I think both of those are really, really high bars. It's interesting, you see, again, me and John, we talk about this, like watching other people's shows, and I love doing that, but not until my show is working. Because if your show isn't working, nothing good can come of watching someone else's show. Because obviously, if the show that you're watching is bad, then obviously that's bad because you're watching something that's not very good. And if the show you're watching is good, well, that's a terrible outcome. So, we're halfway. Oh wow, that's about as good as I've ever seen it. We're halfway up to Arthur's Seat, and what we're looking at is, well, I'm probably going to let myself down here, but I think that's probably Portobello, is it? Yeah, I'm looking across at Portobello, and then there's some, well, what I can only describe as a body of water, and I'm guessing that must be the ocean. There's an island, maybe that's Isle of Wight, maybe, something like that. And then this kind of, a beautiful kind of sun coming through the clouds and making this kind of, striking this, I want to say hillock, beautifully. And then if I turn a bit, you've got Arthur's Seat just over that, and a load of Edinburgh over there. There's Hibernian. I think I'm sort of very much, obviously, my father's son, and I wouldn't usually stop halfway up. But when you're doing a podcast like this, you have to just, at some point, give a shout out to the scenery. I think it's one of the great gifts from my father and my mother, to be fair, that they did love to make us walk, and a lot of trips to the Lake District, and a lot of climbing things like Helvellyn. And so, yeah, I would imagine there's people who come to the festival for the whole month, and just this thing is just something you can sort of occasionally get a glimpse of across the city. Whereas for me, I think it would be sacrilege not to, once you've climbed it the first time, and you realise that it's pretty quick to climb, it would be, I just think it'd be so, my father would be so disappointed in me to be so close to something that you can climb and not do it. So in 2001, the show went well, and it was a sketch show, and it was a really fun month, wide-eyed, just you can't believe what's happening. Audiences coming to the show, flyering for our own show, obviously, on the Royal Mile, meeting people, but not that many. You're totally on the outside. Like, that came later, like 2 or 3 years in, where you suddenly have more of a gang, and you suddenly have this kind of energy where you feel like you are sort of relevant to what's going on. Your show has some kind of worth, and you're making friends, and it's starting to dawn on you that it's kind of a big part of your life this month. But before you get to that, you have to unfortunately navigate your way through 2002.
What happens there?
So in 2002, that is, well, Mark Watson and I both decided that the next thing to do was to work out how to do stand-up. And Mark had done it at university. Alex was now 2 years in and was going great guns in London. And me and Mark started to do it. And so you write your sort of 5 minutes and you go off into London. And to say it was a chastening year barely covers it. And Mark was immediately absolutely brilliant at it. His persona was, in those days, Welsh. And he's one of the best. But that gave him a sort of a kickstart, because he'd go on stage, get the big build-up from the compere. That would die down, and then Mark would go, "Ta!" And immediately 200 people in love with him, and very, very, very funny. Whereas me, I was like, had no idea what it would be. It was like very, very workmanlike. Well, the only thing I can describe it as sort of bad stand-up. And I did it for about 10 gigs across about 10 months, which is also ill-advised. Usually going badly, sometimes going very badly, and often with Mark, with people afterwards. I mean, I was like Sixth Sense, people would just go and just talk to Mark and say, "That was fantastic," with me sort of stood there not knowing whether I was a ghost or not. At that point, I walked away from doing stand-up and, focused on other projects. And I guess my other projects was being Alex Horne's friend and doing a lot of stuff with him. A lot of sketch stuff up there, yeah.
So when do you then go, tell you what, poetry, that's the answer?
Yeah, so about 2 years after that, I got asked, we organised a live gig in a kind of a everyone sort of mates living in London, let's do something way. And it was called Live in Breen's Lounge. Brino, another kind of absolute stalwart of the era. And so we got our line-up. The idea was for me to do stand-up. I said I wouldn't do it. But I'd written these poems and I said I'll read some poems out. And then it was kind of mad. I just climbed through the window to get into the lounge, which is how we came on. And I had some Soviet lounge music playing underneath. And I had a can of Red Stripe. And I was wearing a suit. And I was reading off scraps of paper. And I did 5 minutes. And people laughed. And yeah, that's my act. And it was sort of fully formed immediately. Yeah, just me in a suit, reading out poems, occasionally commenting on the poems and talking to people in between. We're on the top of Arthur's Seat. Wow. It's very, very windy. It's interesting, the kind of, I guess, my relationship with Edinburgh and the Fringe is, I think there's definitely some people who will come up and just go hard at it for maybe 2 or 3 years and sort of crack it, and then find themselves kind of swept into something more, into something in television or maybe even touring and things without coming up here, or basically not using it, but like having it as a kind of a stepping stone, a kind of a rite of passage to get somewhere different. And I think, people like, well, to a certain extent, me. I mean, I didn't come up 3 years ago, and I don't think I'll come up next year. But there's definitely a kind of I don't know what's happening really. Maybe an addiction to it, and I think I really just see the value in it.
I saw, I saw the first half an hour of Mickey 17 and then my internet crashed.
Right.
But what's the leap there? Because presumably you're not screaming at your agent going, how is my poetic comedy not translated into big budget sci-fi?
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, what are you doing? Get me some Arpats movies.
Yeah, the Mickey 17 was, there's no romantic story behind that one. I think someone dropped out, if I'm being honest. Yep, and then I think it's a casting agent. I mean, it's really basic stuff.
Yeah.
But I did get to meet director Bong for brunch, and it was, it is kind of quite pinch yourself stuff in a way, just because I just love Parasite so much. It's such a good film, and then suddenly you're in there, and he's great. He's a kind of big, warm-hearted bear of a man who, throughout the whole experience, I'm like, right from the start, I'm like, sorry, why am I a pigeon in this? And him laughing, and me going, right, okay. And then on set, just saying, I must say, why am I dressed as a pigeon? And him laughing, and me sort of looking at his translator, seeing if she can sort of shed any light on it. And then I think, just didn't ask anymore. And then at the rap party, I remember like going over to him and going, can you just tell me why I was a pigeon in that movie? And him laughing again, and me thinking, I think I'll leave it now. Like, literally.
Do you think he doesn't know? Like, there must be a reason.
No, I think he's just sort of thought, okay, in a kind of, well, in a way that a lot of the funniest things are like this. Like, it's just kind of, there's an incongruous thing where he's thought, that right. Guy can be a pigeon. I mean, hats off to the guy.
Yeah. Do you get to a point where you think, you know what, I can do this, and everyone's going to say there's genius behind it, even though I don't.
Yeah. No, I do think people can assume that that's what's going on. I once was in Melbourne Comedy Festival, and I got onto the stage, and at the start of the gig, my music my walk on music finished, and I opened my can of beer, as I always do at the start, and then I went to my pocket to pull out the first poem, and it wasn't there, and I was suddenly, the colour drained. I'm like, oh dear, this is bad. So I left the stage and went out of this door to go to my dressing room, and in that venue you had to go out into this sort of car park bit and then back in, and went out into the car park bit. The door closed behind me, the other door wouldn't open, and I didn't have my key card because I was in my stage stuff, and then I just stood there for a moment thinking, okay, so the show started. I can just hear really dimly through this thick door and a bit of corridor, I can hear my audience, and they start to titter a little bit, because I think they're thinking, like you say, they're sort of thinking, okay, this is interesting. It's a pretty bold way to start a show. And I'm meanwhile hammering on this door. There's a security guard there. I'm like, I need to get back in. He said it's not my building. And then the laughter is getting louder. I'm like, okay. I think I was out there for, obviously felt like an eternity, but I think it was about over 2 minutes. And then eventually my sound man comes and collects me, and he has a spare set of poems, gives me the poems, and I go on, and I even said, yeah, I've just got locked out for 2 minutes, people laughing. And then at the end, a friend of mine had come to see it, and just have this mad conversation on cross purposes where I'm like, that was so stressful, and she's like, that was great. And I was like, but no, I mean as in the start. And she's like, oh well, yeah, wow, that was bold. I'm like, no, I didn't try and do that. She's like, what are you talking about? Well, why did you do it then? Like, I got locked out. She's like, wow, no, it's funny. Keep it in.
Keep it in. I've seen you talk about sort of just writing in floods.
Yeah.
Do you then go back? Do you edit? Do you ever feel a pressure to be more Tim Key? How do you know you've written something funny that you like? Or is it just interesting? Is it funny you're going for?
Yeah.
Or is it more sort of interesting thoughts? I've always been...
Well, I guess in terms of writing, some of it will come from this sort of thing, just walking along, something will occur, and then you just sort of put it into your notes and stuff, and maybe turn that into something at a later date. The lucky thing I've got is that I've got poetry, and it means that, well, the way I deal with poetry anyway is I just get my notepad out on the train, in a cafe, in the pub, and just for 20 minutes just blitz it and maybe write 3 poems. And those, no, I never go back. They're kind of, I guess I sort of see those as if I was could do art, which I cannot do, that would be like doodling. And so they kind of are fully formed. Very rarely change a word.
Right. But
then if I do something like, I have a sitcom on the radio, that is obviously, yeah, that's brutal. That's a lot of, staring at a blank sheet of paper, and, eventually it's plot and things like that, which are the things that kind of really take it out of you, I think, for me anyway.
What about live shows then? Because they're kind of...
Live show is... Yeah, live shows kind of an alchemy, and I think it sort of really suits me to do live shows, because I can sort of have lots of splintered different ideas which all kind of come together to form something which isn't necessarily a story, but is definitely, it all feels like it's coming from the same mind at least. And so it can be a little kind of all over the place, but has some kind of logic somewhere. But that's the thing that brings us full circle to Edinburgh, where it's turning something which feels like a kind of big mush of stuff into something which suddenly feels like it's a show. And that is, I'll never know how you do that, but that's what you're trying to do.
And that's it for A Life More Wild this year. Have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we will see you in 2026 for more walks with really fascinating guests in the outdoors.